Picture a war where the artillery is engraved card stock, the trenches are drawing rooms heated to 75 degrees, and the wounded are required to smile. Now fill it with generals in whalebone corsets who can end a family with an eyebrow. Add a French chef who earns more than a college president. A flower bill for one dinner that could feed a tenement block for a month. And a list, one list kept in one woman's head, that decides who exists in New York and who merely lives there. That's Fifth Avenue in the winter of 1882, the richest street in the Western Hemisphere and one of the cruelest. Marble on the outside, arithmetic on the inside, a place where you could spend a fortune on a single evening and still not be bowed to at church. A place where you could lose a 10-year campaign between 3 and 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon and be expected to dance a quadrille by 11 that night, smiling, because the smile is part of the uniform. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists craning up at the mansions from the sidewalk. We're going inside, behind the double doors, past the footman, into the morning room where the real war is run. One season, one woman, everything she would have seen, smelled, calculated, endured, and survived. And everything that would have destroyed you in her place. Because it would have. That's not an insult. By the end of tonight you'll understand it's just a fact. So, I make these history stories, and at this point I've honestly stopped trying to figure out whether anyone truly sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who find it relaxing to hear how a folded corner on a calling card could sink a family's ambitions for a decade. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. One honest thing before we go in, because you know I keep a clean line between what's documented and what's borrowed. The street is real. The houses are real. The dates, the prices, the rules, and the ball waiting at the end of this story are all real, checkable in the newspapers of that winter. But the woman whose gloves you're about to wear is stitched together from a dozen women who fought this exact war in these exact rooms. The railroad wives, the iron wives, the oil wives whose names the old families refuse to say out loud. The rooms are real, the eyes are borrowed. I'll always tell you which is which. Here we go. The cards are already in your hands. It is 10 minutes to 9 in the morning, and you are standing at the window of your morning room sorting yesterday's calling cards the way a general sorts dispatches from the front. Because that is exactly what they are. The tray they came up on is sterling silver, chased with grapevines, polished at 6 this morning by a footman you have never once seen doing it. There are 31 cards on it. Before your coffee has finished going cold, you will know precisely how the war is going. The room smells of hothouse roses just beginning to turn. That sweet, bruised smell they get on the third day, when the petals go soft at the edges and the water in the vase starts thinking about becoming something worse. Under the roses, coal smoke from the grate. Under the coal, beeswax and lemon oil from the panelling, and fresh ink, and the faint bitter ghost of chocolate from the cup at your elbow. And under everything, seeping past the double-hung windows, no matter how tightly they are shut, the smell of the avenue itself, horse and stone and smoke and cold. 500,000 fires are burning in this city on a November morning, and every one of them is exhaling over your street. Welcome to Fifth Avenue, New York City, in the last week of November, 1882. Your name is Frances Ellsworth, Mrs. Jacob Ellsworth, of Fifth Avenue at 38th Street, and before that of Cleveland, Ohio, and before that of a farmhouse outside Sandusky, that your husband has quietly bought, and even more quietly never mentions. You're 36 years old. You have been married for 14 years, and for the first 9 of them you did your own mending and cooked on a stove with a cracked lid, because Jacob Ellsworth was a freight clerk with ideas, and ideas take time. Then the ideas started paying. Iron first, then rails, then the beautiful, terrifying paper arithmetic of railroad shares, and by the spring of 1881 you arrived in New York with 11 trunks, a letter of introduction that turned out to be worth exactly nothing, and more money than the families who run this city have seen since the Dutch sold their last farm. Back home, everyone said New York would open like a flower for money like yours. They were wrong in a very particular way, and understanding that way is the work of your life now. Because here is the first thing you learned, and it cost you a full year to learn it. In this city, at this altitude, money is not power. Money is only ammunition. Power is the list, and you are not on the list. Listen to the street below while you sort. There are no vendors crying their wares up here. That's for downtown, for 6th Avenue, for the world where things are bought openly. Here there is only the ring of shod hooves on Belgian block, constant as rain, and the grind of carriage wheels, and somewhere down the block the rhythmic iron cough of ash barrels being emptied. 800 families' worth of servants are hauling out cinders along this stretch of the avenue at this exact hour, and by 10 o'clock every trace of that work will have vanished, because the first commandment of this street is that labour must never be visible. Things here simply are. Fires light themselves. Flowers replace themselves. Dinner appears. You know better. You grew up on the other side of that magic trick. That is your secret weakness, and, though you don't fully understand it yet, your secret weapon. The cards. Focus on the cards. And when I say calling cards, I need you to understand what that means in 1882 New York, because it is not a quaint little courtesy. It is the entire operating system of society, and it is merciless. A card is about 3 inches by 1.5 inches, heavy cream stock, engraved, never printed. Engraving costs 10 times as much, and everyone can tell the difference by touch alone, running a thumb across the letters to feel whether the name stands up in relief. The card says a name and nothing else. What the card means depends on how it arrived, and that grammar is more precise than law. A card with a corner turned down was delivered by the lady herself, in person, her own gloved fingers folding it at your door. That is an event. A flat card was sent in with a footman, while the lady sat outside in her carriage, which is politeness at its exact minimum. I acknowledge you exist. I will not climb 3 steps to prove it. A card left the day after your entertainment means thank you. A card left with no follow-up call within a week means something very different. And a card returned to you, your own card sent back in an envelope, means war is over and you lost. You did not invent this code, and nobody will ever hand you a written copy of it. You assembled it the way a spy assembles a cipher, from errors. Your first season, last winter, you made the mistakes. You called on a Tuesday on a lady who received on Thursdays. You stayed 25 minutes when the limit for a first call is 15. 15 minutes, not one more. And you talk of nothing. The weather, the flowers, the opera, and out. You sent cards by post, which up here might as well be spitting on the doorstep. Nobody corrected you. Nobody ever corrects you. That's the elegance of the machine. It simply closes quietly like water over a stone, and the next 30 doors are not at home. So this year you keep a book. It sits in the lock drawer of your writing desk, bound in plain black morocco like a tradesman's ledger, because that is what it is. Every card in, every card out, every call paid, owed, returned, ignored. Every dinner, every regret, every slight with dates in a shorthand code of your own invention. A system of dots and crosses that would look like laundry marks to anyone who found it. Debits and credits of the soul of New York. Your husband builds railroads with ledgers exactly like it. You are building something harder. Nobody has ever laughed at his ledgers. Smile. Write it down. That is the whole discipline of your life now. Smile. Write it down. You sort the 31 cards into piles. 19 are flat. Footman cards, the small change of the system, wives of new men like your husband keeping the wheel turning. 7 are from what Mrs. Pruin calls the middle altitude. Solid old families, not brilliant, not powerful, but born here, and being born here is the one thing on earth Jacob's money cannot buy you. 4 a corner turned. 4 ladies climbed your steps in person yesterday, while you were out doing the same to others. Good. 4 is good. Last November it would have been none. And then there is the pile that matters, which is empty, and has been empty for 19 months, and you look at the place on the tray where it isn't, the way you look every morning. No card from Mrs. Astor. Let me tell you about the wall you're trying to walk through, because you need to see its shape the way Francis sees it, lying awake at 2 in the morning. At the top of New York there is one woman, Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, Mrs. William Astor of 5th Avenue at 34th Street, 4 blocks south of where you're standing. Schermerhorn, Old Dutch, on Manhattan deeds for 200 years. Astor, the fur and real estate fortune, old enough now that no one remembers to call it a fortune at all. It has aged into something more like weather. Her house is a brownstone that looks, honestly, like a rich undertaker's, and inside it is a ballroom, and into that ballroom, once each winter goes everyone who is anyone in the United States of America. The list of who enters is kept by her, advised by a plump, silver-whiskered gentleman named Ward McAllister, a southerner who has made the classification of other human beings into his life's single work. He speaks of society the way a breeder speaks of horses, bloodlines, form, soundness, and he means it. Together they decide. There is no appeal, because there is no court. There is only the ballroom door. A card from Mrs. Astor left at your door, even a flat one, even carried by the laziest footman in New York, would mean the wall had opened. Every hostess in the city reads the wall the way sailors read sky, and so every morning you look at the silver tray and count what isn't there. You're not bitter about it. You can't afford bitter. Bitterness shows at dinner like a stain on silk. What you feel instead is what Jacob felt for 9 years in a freight office in Cleveland. Patience, with arithmetic inside it. Because here's the thing about this season, the winter of 1882 into 1883, that you can feel in the air of the city itself. The arithmetic is changing. There is too much new money in New York now. Too many railroads, too much oil, too much iron, too many wives like you, learning the code, hiring the chefs, building the marble houses north of 50th Street while the old guard sits south in its brownstones pretending not to see. The pressure is like water behind a dam. Every hostess on this avenue can hear it creaking. You do not know, nobody outside one family knows yet, that 4 blocks north of you, in the new white limestone chateau at 52nd Street, a 29-year-old woman from Mobile, Alabama, named Alva Vanderbilt has already decided exactly where the dam is going to break, and on what date, and to music. You'll be there when it happens, standing near the wall where you always stand. But that is March, and this is November, and between here and there stretches the entire savage geometry of a New York season. You have a dinner in 3 weeks that must be perfect, a ball in January that must not fail twice, an opera problem, a chef-worth garden like a bank vault, and 31 cards in your hands demanding answers by nightfall. The season runs from November to Lent. Ash Wednesday falls on the 7th of February next year. After that, God closes New York the way Mrs. Astor closes her door, and everything unwon stays unwon until autumn, which gives you, this morning, roughly 10 weeks of campaign. This is your second season. New York does not give thirds. Nobody says this out loud. Nobody says anything out loud here. But you know the way you know a train is coming with your hand on the rail. A second season failure hardens into a verdict. The doors that stayed politely closed become permanently closed. The flat cards stop arriving at all, and you become one of those rich, invisible women who take the waters in Europe for their health, because Europe cannot tell the difference between American money and American standing. You have met those women. Their eyes are the loneliest things you have ever seen in your life. So, 15 minutes a call, 15 calls a week. A dinner is a battle, a ball is a siege, a season is a war, and the enemy has held this ground for 200 years. You finish your chocolate standing up, which your mother would have called heathenish, and you ring for Mart, because a general does not go to the front undressed. Mart is French, 41 years old, and the single best investment your husband's money has ever made, including the Toledo spur line. She was lady's maid to a comtesse in Paris, until the comtesse's husband did something unfortunate with other people's money, and she crossed the Atlantic with a trunk of skills that cannot be bought in America at any price. She can dress hair, she can read a room through a keyhole, and she understands, in her bones from the oldest society on earth, that clothes are not decoration. Clothes are heraldry. Clothes are a legal document that everyone in the room can read at 30 feet. She comes in with the morning's armour over her arm and looks at you the way a sergeant looks at recruits. The dark green veil for the morning, madame. The visiting toilette at 2. And tonight. A pause with an entire philosophy inside it. Tonight we are quiet. The garnet velvet. No diamonds. No diamonds at the opera mat. Madame. She lays the green dress across the chair and begins on the buttons of your wrapper, and her voice drops into the register she uses for teaching, which is the register other people use for prayer. Last winter, Madame wore the diamond corsage to the academy, and the old ladies in the boxes looked down at Madame, and what did they see? They saw the price. When a woman of their sort wears great jewels, the jewels say, "My grandmother wore these." When a woman of our sort wears them, the jewels say, "My husband bought these on Tuesday." We do not say that anymore. We whisper. Nothing whispers like garnets and good lace. This is the war on its smallest scale, and it is fought on your body every day beginning at 9 in the morning. Understand what dressing means here, physically, because you will do this 4 times today and some days 6. First the chemise, then the corset. And the corset is not a metaphor. It is an engineering structure of steel and whalebone that takes your waist in hand like a banker taking a debtor's, and Marta braces her knee, actually braces her knee against the chair, to draw the laces. You have learned to breathe at the top of your lungs, to speak in shorter sentences by evening, to never ever sit fully back in a chair between breakfast and midnight. Then the corset cover, the petticoats, the steel-hooped tournure that throws the skirt out behind you, the dress itself, pounds of silk veil, engineered seams, 30 buttons marked closes with a button hook faster than you can watch. Boots, gloves, 20 minutes if nothing goes wrong. You will spend this season something close to 2 full working days of every week simply being assembled and disassembled like artillery. A hod carrier on the new buildings up the avenue earns $1.50 a day. The visiting dress Mardi is buttoning you into cost $400 in Paris before the shipping and the duty. You did that arithmetic once standing exactly here. 266 days of a man's labour, buttoned onto your back to drink tea in, and then you put the arithmetic away in the locked drawer of yourself, because that is the other thing this life requires. You keep the sums, you just stop saying them. At the bottom of your jewel case, under the velvet tray that holds the diamonds you're apparently no longer allowed to wear, there is a small coral brooch shaped like a rose. It cost perhaps $2 40 years ago. It was your mother's, bought by your father off a peddler's cart outside Sandusky the year they married, and she wore it to church every Sunday of her life, and she was buried without it because she'd already pressed it into your hand. Marta found it once, said nothing, and buried it a layer deeper under the chamois, where no housemaid tidying would ever wonder about it. But you know it's there. Some mornings, before a hard day, you open the case and touch it with one finger, the way a soldier touches a saint's medal. You touch it this morning. Then you go downstairs to hold council, because a house like this does not run. It is run. 21 servants. That's the establishment at 38th Street. And I need you to understand what that means, because you're going to hear she had help, and imagine a cook and a maid. 21. A butler, 2 footmen, matched, both just under 6 feet, because footmen are bought like carriage horses by the pair for their legs. A chef and 2 kitchen maids, a scullery girl, 4 housemaids, a parlour maid, Marta, a laundress and her assistant, a useful man, a coachman, 2 grooms, a hall boy, and a boy whose entire employment is silver. Payroll, board, livery, north of $12,000 a year, which is to say the combined annual wages of about 25 of the workmen building the mansions up the street. That is the fixed garrison cost, before a single candle of entertaining is lit. And here is what nobody tells you before you take command of such a house. Every one of those 21 people can see you clearly, and society has arranged matters so that their seeing is a weapon pointed at your throat. Servants talk. Servants' halls up and down this avenue are a telegraph system faster than Western Union, and the old family's butlers dine out on the failures of the new. If your footman answers the door in a wrinkled stocking, if your dinner goes up cold, if your maid is seen crying on the area steps, it is on 34th Street by Sunday. The front line of your war is your own basement, which is why God or the agencies sent you Granger. Granger is your butler, English, 53, a face like a courthouse, and a spine you could survey railroads with. He buttled, that is genuinely the verb, for an earl's younger son in London before deciding that America paid double for half the condescension. He has been with you 14 months, and in that time the household has stopped being a collection of salaries and become a regiment. You meet him now in the small room off the pantry where the day is planned, and he stands with the morning's lists like an adjutant. The florist's man has been, madam. I've had the drawing-room flowers refused. A beet. Roses browning at the margins. Fresh will come by noon, with an apology. Thank you, Granger. The second footman requires a word spoken to him. He smiled at Mrs. Prune's remark on Thursday while serving tea. It was a funny remark. It was, madam. Granger's face declines to confirm that anything has ever been funny in the history of the world. He may laugh on his evening out. In this house, in livery, he is furniture that walks. If the wrong caller had seen it, the story by Friday would be that Mrs. Ellsworth's servants are familiar. Familiar servants mean a mistress who does not know how things are done. That is the whole ladder, madam, and it goes down fast. He says it without cruelty, the way an engineer says that bridges fall. Early on, in your first months, he looked at you across this little desk and gave you the sentence you have repeated to yourself perhaps 1,000 times since. You had asked him plainly, freight clerk plain, what your worst danger was, and he stood exactly as he is standing now and made the one speech you have ever heard him make. A butler sees everything and repeats nothing, madam. Your danger is that you must do the opposite of what the ladies do. They were taught this from the cradle and have forgotten they ever learned it. You are learning it at noon, in public, with everyone watching. So you must see everything, forget nothing, and appear to have been born knowing it. That is the entire trick, madam. There is no other. See everything, forget nothing, appear born to it. Smile, write it down. Then the kitchen, which is to say, then Monsieur Perrault. You descend into a different country. The basement kitchen runs half the depth of the house, floored in stone, walled in whitewash and copper, 40-odd pans in graduated sizes hanging by the range like a percussion section, scoured to a shine one shade off gold. The heat meets you on the stairs, and then the smells, layered like the strata of a cliff. Stock that has been whispering since dawn, veal bones, carrot, the dark sweetness of roasted onion, and under it butter and scorched flour and green celery and blood, and wet feathers from the game larder, and the sharp cold smell of the ice room where a 1/4 ton of Hudson River ice sweats in its zinc-lined dark. Down here labour is allowed to exist. Down here is the engine room of the whole silent ship. Monsieur Perrault is at the long table boning quail, and he does not stop when you enter, because his hands are the one aristocracy in this house that outranks everyone. He is 50, Provençal, built like a barrel of good wine, with forearms scalded smooth and a moustache of great personal authority. He cooked in Paris in houses whose names he deals out like trump cards, came to America to a Boston family, and when that family's fortune quietly folded last autumn, your husband's lawyer was at his lodgings within 11 hours with a contract. Other houses were at the same door by supper time. 11 hours. That is how chefs move in this world. Poached like their own eggs, and the verb is exact. His wages are $6,000 a year. The president of Harvard College does not earn that. Jacob signed without blinking, and Jacob was right, because in the war you are fighting, this barrel-shaped man is siege artillery. A hostess in New York in 1882 is exactly as strong as her kitchen. The old guard can sneer at your name, your pictures, your pronunciation. But the old guard has to eat, and there are perhaps 5 kitchens in this city at Perrault's altitude, and one of them is yours, and every dowager on the avenue knows it. Contempt has never once, in the history of this city, survived contact with perfect terrapin. But a weapon everyone envies is a weapon everyone tries to steal. And this is where you did the one truly clever thing of your first season. When the contract was drawn, you, not Jacob, you, had a clause written into it, over the lawyer's mild amusement. If any other private family should approach Monsieur Perrault with an offer during his term, he is free to entertain it. but he is bound to bring the offer to you first in writing and allow you 8 days to answer it. You framed it to him as respect. A man of his standing deserves to be courted openly, not whispered at through kitchen doors. He signed it with the little bow he reserves for correctly made decisions. The lawyer called it a curiosity. Remember the clause. In this city there is no such thing as an unloaded kitchen. This morning you and Perrault hold the long conference because the 14th of December is 3 weeks away, and on the 14th of December this house gives the dinner on which the entire front half of your season is staked. 24 covers, madame. He sets down the knife at last and wipes his hands, and his voice becomes the voice of a marshal reviewing maps. 9 courses. We begin with oysters, blue points, small, cold, nothing clever. Then the consommé. Then, madame. And here the moustache achieves its full width. Then the terrapin. Terrapin. If you want one word to hold the entire madness of this world, take that one. Diamondback terrapin. A small turtle from the Chesapeake marshes, and the most fashionable single substance in the United States of America. Live terrapin are selling this winter at prices that climb every year. The best fetching several dollars a piece at market, $40 a dozen when the season squeezes, which means a single course at your dinner will cost what your father earned in 2 months of farming. There are men in Baltimore whose whole profession is terrapin. Perrault prepares it in the Maryland style with a reverence he otherwise reserves for the saints of Provence. The meat picked by hand, the cream, the sherry going in off the fire and his standing kitchen law that the scullery girl may watch, but the sherry only he may pour. After the terrapin, a fish. After the fish, the entrees. Then a sorbet of Roman punch to rest the palate at the centre of the battle like a truce. Then the canvas-back ducks. Then salad. Then the sweets. Then the ices. Then fruit and coffee, and the whole engagement conducted in French. The menu cards, engraved, will say consommé à la royale and terrapin à la Maryland, and every guest will read them in silence. And here is the truth you have learned about those cards. They are an examination paper. Half the point of a French menu is to discover, gently, mercilessly, who at the table cannot read it. The Madeira for the terrapin, Perrault says, closing his eyes briefly. The old Sertial your husband bought from the Boston sale. Madame, with this dinner, I make you no promises. I make you a statement of fact. There will be no better table in New York that night. Whether the people at it deserve my food, a shrug of purest Provence. That is not a kitchen question. You go back up the stairs into the silent country, where the roses have already been changed, and no one saw it happen. Luncheon is a cutlet and a half-glass of claret, eaten mostly standing at the window, because at 2 o'clock Martha reassembles you. The whole engineering of it again, corset to gloves, into the visiting toilette, and at 2:30 the carriage comes around and the afternoon campaign begins. The carriage matters. Everything about the carriage matters. It is a landau, deep bottle green, and the panels carry no monogram, because Martha drew a breath over your monogrammed first attempt, the way surgeons draw breath over wounds. The old family's carriages are almost shabby, that studied, expensive shabbiness that takes 3 generations to afford. Your coachman and groom sit above in dark livery, faces forward, and they will hold those faces through everything the streets of New York are about to do, because that is what they are paid for. The horses are bays. Not the showiest pair Jacob could buy, the second showiest. You are learning, and when I say the streets of New York, I need you to understand what that means in 1882, because it is not the tidy picture the word carriage puts in your head. This is the loudest city in the Western world, and one of the filthiest. And the moment your wheels turn off the avenue at 23rd Street into the shopping district, it swallows you whole. Broadway below Madison Square is a single continuous collision that never quite happens. Omnibuses in their liveries of red and yellow, stages, drays stacked with barrels, express wagons, private carriages, hacks, a beer wagon with its team of greys leaning into the load, all of it interleaved wheel to wheel with no signals, no rules worth the name, only the shouted negotiations of drivers conducting the city's real diplomacy. Overhead on 6th Avenue, the elevated railroad slams past on its iron stilts every few minutes, showering cinders and hot oil down on the horses, and the horses have learned not to bolt, mostly. The noise is not a sound anymore at this density. It is a pressure. Iron tires on granite block, 100,000 horseshoes, the L, the newsboys screaming the afternoon editions, and under it all a low ceaseless grind like the city chewing. And the smell. You keep the windows up and it makes no difference. Manure first and always. The horses of New York lay down hundreds of tons of it a day, and the crossing sweepers fight it like Canute fighting tide. Coal smoke, ammonia sharpness from the stables on the side streets, roasting chestnuts at the corners, tar, wet wool, and cutting through everything as you pass a fishmonger's, a bright silver blade of brine. In August, this street is unbearable. In November, it is merely total. This is the Ladies' Mile, Broadway and 6th Avenue from 9th Street to 23rd, the only public territory in New York where a woman of your position may walk unescorted without comment, and it exists for one purpose: to convert husbands' money into wives' armour. The great dry goods palaces rise 6 stories in cast iron and plate glass. Stewart's, Arnold Constable, Lord and Taylor with its steam elevator. Inside, behind counters, stand the shop girls, hundreds upon hundreds of them, in regulation black on their feet, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, for $5 or $6 a week. Forbidden to sit, forbidden in some houses to lean. You know the number, the way you know all the numbers you no longer say aloud. The Les Mart ordered for your January ball gown cost one girl's full year of standing. You are not shopping today. Today is calls, and calls are the front line. So let me put you fully inside the mechanism, because this exact ritual, is the reason you would not survive a week in this woman's place. Between 3 and 5 o'clock, the ladies of New York visit one another. It sounds gentle. It is a duel with printed rules that nobody prints. You carry a flat silver case of cards, your own and your husband's, which are smaller, because even the cards have sexes. At each door, the groom jumps down, rings, and inquires whether the lady of the house receives. If not, and here is the blade, you leave cards, one of yours, 2 of your husband's, 1 for the master, 1 for the lady, never more, never fewer, and the corner of yours turned down to prove your own body came to the door. If she receives, you go in, and the clock starts. 15 minutes, not one more. Inside those 15 minutes, the weather, the opera, the flowers, one careful compliment, no politics, no business, no illness beyond one sentence, no religion, nothing real, nothing warm, nothing true. And every syllable weighed on scales you cannot see by a woman who's been weighing syllables since the nursery. Another caller arrives. You rise within 2 minutes, gracefully, mid-sentence if need be, and go. You will pay perhaps 6 such calls this afternoon. A serious hostess pays and receives hundreds in a season. Your black book logged over 400 last winter. hours and hours of your one mortal life, corseted, smiling, discussing weather you cannot feel through the plate glass, and all of it, is one long continuous examination with no grades given, ever, until the season's end, when you discover what you are by who invites you. You do not find it empty. That is the frightening thing you have stopped admitting to anyone but yourself. You find it fascinating. The way Jacob finds freight rates fascinating. It is a game of perfect information density where nothing is said and everything is transmitted. But you watched your own sister visit from Cleveland last spring, sit in on one afternoon of it, and go up to her room afterward with the particular headache of a person who has watched knives juggled for 3 hours. She left on the Thursday train. She does not ask to come back. First call, Madison Avenue. A railroad wife like yourself, 2 years further up the ladder, received. 14 minutes of nothing, one useful fact. The patriarch's first ball is fixed for December, Delmonico's. Delivered the way all real information is delivered here, as an afterthought at the door. Second call, not at home, cards left, corner turned. Third call, not at home. Fourth call, and this is the one your whole afternoon has been arranged around, though no one watching could tell. The brownstone of Mrs. Peyton Van Zandt on Washington Square North. Mrs. Van Zandt is 71 years old and approximately 4 feet 11 inches of black silk and Dutch bone, and her family has held Manhattan ground since it was purchased from the Indians, a transaction she refers to, without irony, as recent. She holds one of the 18 boxes at the Academy of Music. She dined with Mrs. Astor last Tuesday. She is, in the geology of this city, bedrock, and she's your particular wall, because her approval, once, anywhere, would open a dozen doors that money has bounced off for 2 years. You have left cards at this door 6 times since October of last year. You have been received once for 11 minutes in April, a concession you later understood was made so that she could examine you. The way one examines a horse one has no intention of buying. The groom rings. You watch from the carriage, face arranged, hands folded, and you can see past the opening door into the hall. You can see, actually see, the lamps lit in the front room, a fire's shiver on the ceiling, the shadow of a servant crossing, the unmistakable warm inhabited life of a house that is at home to somebody. Mrs. Van Zandt is not at home. The butler says it to your groom with the door half open and the firelight moving behind him, and this is the point, you understand. This is the art. A lie everyone can see is not a lie here. It is a sentence in both meanings. She is at home. She is at home to her own kind, at this hour, over tea, 4 feet from her own front window, and the message delivered through 2 servants without a word of it touching either principal is, "You may leave your little cards until the trumpet sounds, madam. The wall does not argue. The wall does not hate you. Hate would mean you exist." "Cards, madam?" the groom asks at the carriage window. "Cards," you say, and your voice comes out exactly level, which is a skill that cost you a year. One of yours corner turned, 2 of your husband's. The door closes, the bays pull on, smile, write it down, and now, because a general who cannot learn from repulse is only a gambler, you drive to the one house in New York where the wall talks. Mrs. Lydia Preen lives on East 10th Street near the Church of the Ascension, in a narrow brick house 2 windows wide with a parlour whose carpet has been turned twice, and whose portraits could not be bought with every dollar Jacob has. Preen is an old Albany Dutch name, patroon blood, older than the Van Zandts if it comes to counting, and it comes to counting constantly. Her husband is 8 years dead, and what he left her, managed carefully, produces just about what you spend on flowers. She has standing beyond dispute and a purse beyond help, and society keeps a shelf for such women and dusts it respectfully. And on that shelf she was quietly starving for conversation until you found her. You met her at a musicale last winter, one of those charity evenings where the circles are permitted to touch, and she looked at you for a long moment over her fan with bright black unforgiving eyes, and later, at the door, said quietly, "You watch the room like a bird of prey, Mrs. Ellsworth. Most of your sort watch it like spaniels. Call on me on a Monday." What exists between you now is a treaty neither of you has ever spoken aloud. She comes to your dinners, which are the best food she's eaten since 1869, and her name on your guest list is a small, real cannon. You come to her parlour, and she teaches you New York, the true map, the bloodlines, the feuds, which of the 800 boxes and pews and names connect to which, and what everything means. Both of you know exactly what is being traded. Neither of you has ever once been vulgar enough to name it, and somewhere in the past year, without either of you ever saying this aloud either, the treaty has quietly become the nearest thing you have in this city to a friendship. She receives you by the fire with her feet on a needlework stool and does not pretend surprise. Washington Square wasn't at home, she says. It is not a question. News moves ahead of your carriage. It always does. With the lamps lit, you say. Of course with the lamps lit. If she snubbed you in the dark, how would you know? Mrs. Prynne pours the tea herself. The one servant is elsewhere. Sit. You have 20 minutes today. I'm feeling generous, and no one fashionable ever calls this early. And then, because she has decided the lesson has arrived, she sets down the pot and gives it to you straight, the way no one else in this city above the basement will. You're making one mistake, and it is the mistake of your entire regiment. You think the wall is about money, that they despise it because it's new, and that if it ages a little, if you soften it with good works and good dinners and quiet gowns, they'll forgive the smell of the mint. Wrong. Fortunes here have always been new. My grandfather's was new. The Astor money was pelts and slum rents, and every soul in this city knows it. No. She holds her cup in both small hands, and over it her eyes are genuinely kind, which makes it worse. What they cannot forgive is the wanting. You want it, dear. You want it so beautifully. The way your husband wanted his railroad, laid awake wanting it, and to people who have never in their lives been permitted to want anything visibly, who were taught that wanting shows like elbows, that is the mark of the shop. They can forgive you anything except the wanting. Then what am I to do with it? You hear your own voice come out quieter than you meant. The wanting. Do what they do. She sets the cup down without a click. Wear it like whalebone, under everything, holding everything up, and never, never where it shows, and then wait for the world to change, because it will. I've watched this city eat its walls before. My mother's people blackballed the Astors, dear, blackballed them roundly. And then one morning the world had changed, and there was Mrs. Astor holding the list. This city worships its walls right up until the morning it sells them for the stone. She glances at the little clock. Your 20 minutes are 15 after all. Go home, and Francis. The first name is new. You both let it pass as though it isn't. Whatever you spend on the 14th, spend it on warmth. The food will be perfect. Your Frenchman is a tyrant of genius. Everyone knows it. What they will come to see is whether the house has a soul or a price tag. Show them the soul. You actually have one. It's your only real advantage over Washington Square. At 5, you make the turn every carriage in New York makes at 5, up into Central Park for the afternoon parade. The slow procession around the drives where society exercises its horses and inspects itself. Frederick Law Olmsted's Park, 20 years and more in the making and barely finished. 840 acres of manufactured Eden, with the raw new city stacked at its edges. The Belvedere on its rock. The mall under its bare elms, and rolling past you in the cold pink light the whole cast of your war. The Joneses, the Goleys, a Vanderbilt coach with its perfect matched 4. Bows are given and withheld from carriage to carriage with the precision of naval gunnery. A full bow, a half bow, the fractional inclination that acknowledges receipt without conferring recognition, and the level unseeing gaze, the cut that files you under objects. You keep score without moving your face. 4 full, 2 half, 1 cut. The cut is a Van Zandt cousin. Smile. Write it down. The lamps are being lit along the drives as you come out at the 5th Avenue gate, and the city below is turning to Firefly. And 4 blocks short of home on the right, you pass 52nd Street, where it stands. The new Vanderbilt house, number 660, a white limestone chateau lifted whole out of the Loire Valley by an architect named Richard Morris Hunt. Turrets and traceries and a copper roof going green, blazing with gaslight tonight like a landed ship. 3 years the masons worked on it. The papers guess it cost $3 million. The old guard from their brownstone pews call it, with a sniff you could hear from the street. Theatrical. William Kissam Vanderbilt's house, which is to say, Alva's. You do not know her. She is new money too, newer than yours by the old clocks for all the millions, and the wall stands against her exactly as it stands against you. Academy boxes refused, Astor cards unarriving, the whole familiar silence. The difference between you, though neither of you knows it yet, is only this. You've been trying to go through the wall politely. She has decided to make the wall come to her. The house blazes past your window and is gone, and your bays turn down the darkening avenue for home, where Marta waits to take you apart and build you into a third woman, the evening one, because tonight, God help you, is the opera. The Academy of Music stands at 14th Street and Irving Place, and it has stood there since 1854, and when it was built it was the largest opera house in the world, a great sooty temple seating thousands, with gilt going soft at the edges and a smell inside of gas, dust, hair pomade, and 30 years of gardenias. But nobody who matters comes to the Academy for music. The Academy exists for the boxes, and here is the number on which this entire winter of New York history turns, so hold it. 18. 18 proprietary boxes. That is all there are, and they are owned, not rented. Owned like pews, like land, handed down, willed, married, never, ever sold. Belmonts, Beekmans, Skeelers. Mrs. Astor sits in one. Mrs. Van Zandt sits in another. 18 boxes, and by 1882 there are in New York perhaps 40 families with the fortunes of emperors, and you may do the subtraction yourself, sitting anywhere in the house you like, except the boxes. Last October, Jacob wrote to the Academy's directors. It was a beautiful letter, drafted 3 times. Respectful, patient, offering. This is documented practice. Gentlemen did precisely this, to pay handsomely for a box should any interest ever be conveyed. The answer arrived in 11 lines. It regretted, it appreciated, it noted that no boxes were available, nor anticipated to become available, and it remained his most obedient servant. 11 lines to say one word. Jacob read it at breakfast, set it down beside his coffee, and said nothing at all for the length of an egg. Then he put it in the inside drawer of his library desk, and you have both pretended ever since that he keeps it there for no reason. Your husband is a gentle, unpolished, implacable man who once waited 9 years to buy the freight company he clerked for. The letter stays in the drawer the way a splinter stays in a palm. So tonight you sit in the parquet. The seats are perfectly good. That is what everyone says of the parquet. Perfectly good seats, the good music seats. And it is true, and it changes nothing, because at the Academy the axis of the world is vertical, and from the parquet you spend the evening at the bottom of a well, with society ranged in its golden horseshoe above you, glittering, visiting box to box between acts, conducting the actual business of the city over your head. There is Mrs. Van Zandt, 4 feet 11 in black silk, holding court. There, across the horseshoe, the Astor box, and at the interval you watch Ward McAllister himself, silver whiskers and gardenia, bow over Mrs. Astor's hand and settle beside her like a plump cat into sunlight. The soprano is from Milan and she is magnificent, and no one in the 18 boxes has heard a note of her in 30 years. In the carriage afterward, Jacob looks out the window for 10 blocks and then says, in his flattest freight office voice, "There are men putting up a building at Broadway and 39th. Yellow brick. You may have seen the hoardings." You have. Everyone has. 60-odd of us have subscribed. Vanderbilts, Goulds, Rockefellers, Morgan, Ellsworth, as of Thursday. A pause, and in the passing lamplight you catch something in his face you have not seen since Cleveland, since the freight office, since the 9 patient years. They wouldn't sell us a box, Francis, so we're building our own opera house, 122 boxes, every one of them ours, the Metropolitan Opera House. It will open next autumn, the 22nd of October, 1883, though no one knows the date yet, with Faust, though no one knows that either. And the old guard downtown are already calling it the Yellow Brewery and laughing at it from behind their 18 boxes, and they should not be laughing. You lie awake that night doing what you always do with large news, arithmetic. 18 boxes at the Academy, 122 rising at 39th Street. For 200 years, this city's answer to new money was to make it wait at the door. And somewhere in the last few years, without any single person deciding it, the new money has stopped knocking and begun, quietly, house by house, to build a parallel city, its own opera, its own balls, its own list. The wall still stands. But you fell asleep that night having understood, for the first time, that the wall now has a construction site across the street. 3 weeks later, the 14th of December, 1882, you fight your set-piece battle. A dinner of 24 in this world is not a meal. It is a full military operation with a paper trail, and it begins 10 days out at your writing desk with the guest list, which is strategy itself. You need old names to consecrate the table, new names to owe you afterward. 1 wit, 1 beauty, no more than 1 bore, and no 2 people currently at war, which requires knowing who is currently at war, which is half of what Mrs. Preen is for. Invitations go out 10 days ahead by hand. Granger's footmen walking the avenue like a diplomatic corps. And this is the iron law McAllister himself preaches. A dinner invitation once accepted is sacred. He is said to tell men that if they die beforehand, Their executors must attend. Nobody laughs when he says it, because in this city it is barely a joke. Dinner is the one engagement that cannot be thrown over, which is exactly what makes it the perfect instrument for measuring, to the inch, precisely how much you are worth. Then, for 10 days, the machine runs. Perrault closes his kitchen like a citadel arming. Terrapin in from Baltimore alive in barrels of eelgrass, canvas backs hung, the Circle brought up to temper. Clunder's men build the flowers. American Beauty roses at this season cost more apiece than a shopgirl's daily wage, and the table will carry 10 dozen, banked down the damask between the candelabra, with smilax roping the chandelier. The silver boy works 2 days. Granger drills the footman on the service à la Russe, every course carved away from the table, offered at the left shoulder, 1 servant to every 3 guests, wine poured to the half-glass without a sound. And you, at your desk, fight the true battle, the one that decides everything, the one no guest will ever see, the seating. And when I say seating, I need you to understand what precedence means at a New York dinner in 1882, because there is no printed table of ranks in a republic, which does not mean rank doesn't exist. It means rank floats, unwritten, lethal, and the hostess alone is responsible for computing it. Age, name, blood, office, fortune, in an order that shifts by the year and the room. Who takes the hostess into dinner? Who sits at her right? Get it right and no one notices, because getting it right is simply the air these people breathe. Get it wrong and no one says a word, and it is remembered longer than a bankruptcy. You work at it for 3 evenings with your black book open like a gunnery table. 24 names on slips of pasteboard, shuffled and reshuffled around a diagram of the table, and on the 3rd evening you make your mistake. It does not look like a mistake. That is the nature of the species. At your right hand you place a United States Senator, a friendly, booming, railroad-made man of national consequence, Jacob's ally in 2 legislatures, the most publicly important person your table has ever held. Precedence to the office. It seems not merely defensible but obvious. And to do it, you pass over a quiet, grey, entirely unremarkable gentleman with a chin like a receding tide, who holds no office, heads no company, and has done nothing whatever in 60 years except be descended. A name that has sat on Manhattan deeds since before there were Ellsworths in Ohio at all. A second cousin, as it happens, of Mrs. Peyton Van Zandt. In the code of the old city, blood outranks office, always, everywhere, and a senator of railroads is precisely the kind of splendid new thing a hostess of the old school would seat with honour, lower down. You know the rule. You have it in your book, in your own cipher. But the senator is consequence, and the grey gentleman is nothing, visible nothing, and some Cleveland freight office corner of your soul makes the call. Consequence over chins. Hold that slip of pasteboard a moment, because everything between here and March grows out of it. The dinner itself. The dinner is a masterpiece. You know it the way a captain knows a ship is answering. The house glows. The roses are a low red fire down the table. The terrapin goes round in its silver chafing dishes, and a silence falls of the only kind that matters in New York, the silence of 24 people simultaneously declining to admit that nothing in their lives has ever tasted like this. The Circle lands like a benediction. The wit is witty. The beauty glows. Mrs. Preen, at mid-table in her turned black velvet, deals out Albany stories like a duellist, and twice makes the whole board laugh at once. Even the grey gentleman eats well, and says to his neighbour audibly that the canvas back is correct, which from a chin like that, Mrs. Preen will tell you later, is a proclamation. At midnight the last carriage rolls, and Jacob stands with you in the wrecked splendour of the empty dining room, candles guttering, and puts his arm round your waist like a clerk at a church picnic and says, "Francis, we might actually win this." The bill for the evening, Perrault's provisions, Clunder's roses, the extra hands, the candles, the laundering of 40 yards of damask, comes to a little over $2,000. 4 years of a hod carrier's wages eaten in 3 hours. You write it in the book and do not say the sum aloud, even to the book. For 6 days, nothing. Then the machine of consequences begins, and you learn why they call it a season. Because nothing here happens as an event. Everything happens as weather. The first sign is a call unreturned. The wife of one of the old name couples from your own table, owing you, by every law of the code, a call within the week, and no card comes. The second sign is Christmas week. 2 invitations you had reason to expect, a musicale and a skating party, and neither arrives, and there is no way to ask because nothing has happened. There is never anything so vulgar as a happening. The third sign wears black silk. 2 days after Christmas, on the sidewalk outside Arnold Constable's, at a distance of 6 feet in the clear winter light, you come face to face with Mrs. Peyton Van Zandt, and she looks at you, into your face, into your eyes, with the level unseeing gaze one gives a lamp-post and passes on, the cut direct, administered in public, on the Ladies' Mile at the busiest hour, which is to say, administered for an audience. It lands in your body, that look. That is the thing no one tells you about the cut. Your face holds. Martha's training, a year of practice. Your face holds beautifully. But somewhere under the whalebone your animal self takes it like cold water, because you are a social creature of a social species, and being unseen at 6 feet is a thing mammals feel. You complete your errand. You buy the gloves. You compliment the shop girl on the stitching, and her tired face lights, because kindness rolls downhill easiest when it has just been refused uphill. And in the carriage, alone, you sit very straight, and you open the little Morocco book against your knee, and you write the date, and the place, and one word in your own cipher, and it is not a word your mother taught you. It takes Mrs. Preen, on the Monday, 4 minutes to find the wound and name the bullet. "The senator," she says, feet on the needlework stool, not even needing to think. You seated the office over the chin. Oh, my dear brilliant fool. The chin dined out on it within the week. The chin has dined out on nothing else for 30 years. You have given him a career. By now it is doctrine in every drawing-room below 23rd Street. Mrs. Ellsworth ranks money over blood, which to them is not a slip of pasteboard, Francis. It is a confession of everything they always suspected, that underneath the Frenchman and the Garnets, you people are keeping ledgers. She does not know about the book in your locked drawer, or she knows everything, and this is mercy. With Mrs. Pruen you will never be sure. It will cost you 6 weeks, the skating parties, and very possibly your January ball. It would have cost a born hostess nothing. A born hostess would be forgiven, because with her it would have been carelessness. With you, nothing is ever carelessness. That is the tax you pay, dear. You're not permitted a single human mistake, not one. Now pour the tea and let us see what can be saved. 1 slip of pasteboard, 6 weeks of weather. That is the exchange rate, and that, right there, is why you would not survive this. Not the corsets, not the hours, not the 400 calls, The arithmetic of error. You live in a world where mistakes cost money, apologies, at worst a job. She lives in a world with no apologies at all, where the smallest error compounds daily, silently, at interest, in rooms she will never enter, and the only notice of the debt is a lamppost stare on a public sidewalk. And she gets up the next morning and reads the cards on the silver tray and smiles and writes it down. New Year's Day, 1883, arrives grey and hard frozen, and with it one of the strangest rituals this city has ever practiced. Already old-fashioned, already dying, but not dead yet. The gentleman's calls. On the 1st of January, by custom running back to the Dutch, the ladies of New York keep open house, and the gentlemen spend the entire day driving from door to door to pay their respects at every house they know. 5 minutes, a bow, a glass, and on. In the roaring years just past, young men ran up lists of 60 and 70 calls and reeled home by lamplight. The punch bowls of this island on the 1st of January could float a ferry. It is tamer now. The best houses serve bouillon and coffee as often as punch, and the newspapers say every year that the custom is vulgar and doomed. But it limps on, and for you it has one great mercy. On this single day, the doors open by statute. Nobody is not at home on New Year's Day, so you stand in your drawing room from 11 until dusk in dove-grey silk, beside the punch you serve mild and the bouillon you serve scalding, and you receive. 41 gentlemen pass your threshold. You count, of course you count. Railroad men and bank men, 2 judges, Jacob's senator, booming happily, entirely unaware of what his placement cost you, which is the way of senators. And at 4:15, in the blue last light, with the room half empty, Granger opens the door and announces, with a voice that betrays nothing, and eyebrows that betray 1/2 of 1 millimeter, a small, grey, chinless gentleman in an overcoat of superb antiquity, the Chin, Mrs. Van Zant's cousin. He stays 4 minutes precisely. He takes bouillon, not punch. He says the weather is seasonable, that his cousin is in excellent health, and looks at you when he says it, mild as milk, and you look back exactly as mild, and both of you understand that a shot has been exchanged, though neither of you could say for certain in which direction it went. Then he sets down the cup, says at the door, to the air, that the terrapin in December had been correct, and is gone into the dusk. Mrs. Preen, when she hears, laughs until she has to put down her tea. That, my dear, was a reconnaissance. The family sent the Chin to see whether you were bleeding. You served him hot soup and good manners, and he found no wound to report. Well done. Now they are confused, and confusion in that tribe is the beginning of respect. You will need the respect because January is the month of the patriarchs, and you are not going. Understand the machine called the Patriarch's Balls, because Ward McAllister built it precisely to be understood. 10 years ago, in the winter of 1872 into 73, he gathered 25 gentlemen of what he judged the true and rightful aristocracy of New York, a roll call of Astors and Livingstons and Rutherfords, and organized them into a permanent committee of exclusion. Each patriarch subscribes his share and receives the right to invite, to each ball at Delmonico's, 4 ladies and 5 gentlemen on his personal honour and no other ticket, with the stated principle, McAllister's own doctrine, that each is answerable for whom he brings, so that one unsuitable name reflects upon its sponsor like a forged cheque. The arithmetic yields a few hundred souls in a city of over 1 million, and that is the whole invention. Society, incorporated. The wall, given minutes and a treasurer. An invitation to the patriarchs cannot be bought, petitioned, or even openly discussed. It can only descend like weather, like grace. On the evening of the first patriarchs of 1883, you dine at home, alone with Jacob, off Perrault's incomparable soul, half a mile from Delmonico's at 26th Street, where every carriage in the world is discharging every name in the world under the gas globes, and Mrs. Preen is there in her third best velvet on the arm of a patriarch cousin, because her blood is her ticket, though her purse cannot paper a wall, and you are here with the soul. Jacob talks lightly of the yellow brick rising at 39th Street, and you talk lightly back, and neither of you says the name Delmonico. And that silence, that careful mutual light talk over perfect fish, is as close as the two of you ever come to admitting on the same evening that it hurts. 16 days later comes your own ball, and New York teaches you the difference between a wall and a tide. You had planned it since October. The 25th of January, 300 invitations, the double drawing rooms thrown together, Lander's orchestra, a supper by Perrault that was to end the argument permanently. After the December weather, you and Mrs. Preen pruned the list, reinforced it, hedged it. The invitations went out on the 4th, engraved, correct to the last serif, hand-delivered. And then, for 3 weeks, the answers came in on the silver tray, morning by morning, and you watched, with your face perfectly still and your cipher recording, the precise depth sounding of your position in this city. The new money acceptances come fast and warm. The middle altitude accepts mostly. The solid old families who like your table and can afford to be seen at it. But the top of the list, the 20 names that were the entire point, the box holders and the patriarch wives, the names that consecrate regrets, beautiful regrets, engraved, kind, prompt. Promptness itself a small cruelty, since a prompt regret means no other engagement was needed for the evening. The regret is the engagement, 19 of 20. The chin alone accepts in a spidery antique hand, and you stare at that acceptance for a long moment and decide you will never fully understand this city, which is, Mrs. Preen would tell you, the first mark of understanding it. The ball is, by every measure your Cleveland soul knows how to take, a triumph. The house incandescent, 240 guests, the supper legendary by midnight, the German led with real gaiety, the last carriage at 4, and it changes nothing, and you knew by 11 o'clock that it would change nothing, because a ball is not measured by who dances, it is measured by who is absent, and absence glowed in your gaslit rooms that night like phosphorus. The 19 regrets were the event. The dancing was merely what it looked like. 4 days later, the counterattack arrives where you least expected it, which is to say, in the kitchen. Granger comes to you at the morning conference with a face so wooden it can only mean gunfire. Madame, Monsieur Perrault requests the favour of an interview at your convenience. He has received the pause of a butler placing a grenade gently on a desk. A letter. Perrault stands in your morning room in his whites, holding the letter the way a man holds a summons, and lays it before you with 2 fingers, heavy cream stock, a lawyer's hand. An offer to Monsieur Alphonse Perrault, chef de cuisine, $7,500 a year, $1,500 over his present wage, plus 2 kitchen maids of his own choosing, plus August in France, to take charge of the kitchens of a household which the letter does not name, because it does not need to. The lawyer's firm is the firm that has served the Van Zandt connection since the Van Zandts stopped speaking Dutch, and everyone in the room knows it. including the letter, do you see the shape of it? Because you did, instantly, standing very still with your hand flat on the paper. This is not about dinner. Nobody in that tribe wakes up craving a Provençal's terrapin badly enough to pay a college president's ransom for it. This is the December weather still compounding. The same intelligence that cut you on a sidewalk now reaching down through a lawyer to pull the single load-bearing stone out of your house in the middle of your second season. Take the Frenchman, and Mrs. Ellsworth's table dies in February. Her dinners become food. The one lever she holds on the whole old city snaps in her hand. It is brilliant. It is exactly what you would do. But the clause. He was bound to bring you the offer in writing, and here he stands, having brought it, punctilious, unreadable, moustache at parade rest, and you have 8 days to answer. You do not need 8. You have been carrying the answer since October of 1881, since a lawyer's amused pen scratched it into being. You match the 7,500. You add the second kitchen maid and the August. And then, because Mrs. Preen has spent a year teaching you that in this city the money is never the message, you add the thing the other house, being the other house, would never think to offer. You tell Monsieur Perrault that beginning this spring on one Sunday each month, the kitchen of 38th Street is his to command for his own table, his guests, his menu, his door, the household to serve him, because a man of his standing ought once a month to eat his own food sitting down. Perrault looks at you for a long moment. Something moves behind the moustache that on a smaller face might have been called emotion. "Madame," he says at last, folding the lawyer's letter in half, and in half again with the finality of pastry, "I have cooked for a marquise, 2 bankers, and a bishop. Not one of them ever remembered that a cook eats." He bows, the full bow, the one you've seen him give twice. "I remain. And, madam, as to the house that sent this." He tucks the folded letter into his whites like a trophy of war. "Their sources are from the last century, and their terrapin, I am told by men I trust, is boiled. Boiled, madam. One does not defect to Carthage." Granger at the door permits himself the millimetre, and then, 12 days later, at the stroke of a church calendar, the whole roaring machine, the calls, the cards, the dinners, the balls, the entire glittering front, stops dead. Ash Wednesday, the 7th of February, 1883. You have to understand what Lent does to this city because no law commands it, and nothing on earth could countermand it. On Tuesday night, New York is a ballroom. On Wednesday morning, it's a Dutch parlour with the shutters drawn. The orchestras are paid off. The florists' wagons stand idle. The great houses go dark by 10. Society puts on its sober silks, goes to church visibly, dines only en famille and in whispers, and for 40 days the war is suspended along its entire front. Not ended, suspended, like armies wintering in sight of each other's fires. The old guard keeps Lent hardest of all, and keeps it socially. Abstinence itself made into one more examination, one more thing that can be done correctly or vulgarly, and done correctly in front of witnesses. For you, this Lent of 1883 is arithmetic again, and the arithmetic is grim. The season is over. 10 weeks of campaign gone, the dinner a masterpiece that bought you nothing, the pasteboard error still compounding, the cut still uncancelled, the ball answered with 19 engraved regrets, Mrs. Astor's card as absent as it was in November. By every book but yours, your second season has failed. Politely, beautifully, completely, and New York does not give thirds. Through the grey weeks of February you drive to church and read and sit with Mrs. Pruin on Mondays and re-letter your cipher, and you begin, quietly, at your desk, in the way of a woman keeping her hands busy, to compose in your head the letter to Jacob's sister about how pleasant Cleveland is in the autumn. And then, in the last days of February, into that shuttered, whispering, dead calm city, a rumour arrives that stands every drawing room on Fifth Avenue on its head. It comes to you, as the best intelligence always does, through the basement telegraph. Marked first, from a French maid 2 houses north, then Granger, confirming through channels of his own, both of them reporting the same impossible thing. The new white chateau at 52nd Street is hiring. Costumiers, florists, carpenters, caterers' men by the hundred. Mrs. William K. Vanderbilt, Alva, the little Alabama cyclone the Academy would not seat and Mrs. Astor will not see, is giving a ball. Not a ball. The ball, a fancy dress ball, the first great costume ball New York has attempted in a generation, to christen the chateau. 1,200 invitations, the papers will soon be saying, for the Monday after Easter. The 26th of March, 1883, and as Lent creeps by, and the rumour hardens into fact, you watch something happen in this city that you will describe to your grandchildren, and they will not believe you. You watch the wall begin to negotiate. Because here is what Alva Vanderbilt has understood that you, in 2 years of patient siege, did not, and you will spend the rest of your life half admiring and half hating her for it. The wall cannot be climbed and cannot be bought, but the wall is made of people, and people have children, and the children can be flanked. A fancy dress ball in a $3 million chateau is not an entertainment. It is a spectacle of a kind this city has never seen, and the young people of the old guard, the sons and daughters of the very boxes that voted to keep the Vanderbilts out, want to be at it, with a wanting that no amount of breeding can whalebone down. Through the grey obedient weeks of Lent, while their mothers keep the fast, the young people of New York are organising quadrilles. You must understand the quadrille to understand what happens next. At a great ball, the quadrilles are the crown jewels. Set dances, rehearsed for weeks like theatricals, in costumes built to a common scheme, danced by invitation within the invitation. To be asked into a quadrille for the Vanderbilt ball is the difference between attending history and being part of it. By the second week of March, there are 6 quadrilles in rehearsal across this city. A hobby horse quadrille whose riders will wear life-size horses of real hide. 2 months in the making. A mother goose, a Dresden china quadrille all in white and gilt, an opera bouffe, a go-as-you-please, and above them all a star quadrille for the prettiest young women of society, who will dance as twin stars in yellow, blue, mauve and white, each with an electric light burning in her hair. Electricity itself, Mr. Edison's brand new lightning worn as a hair ornament, because this is 1883 and the future is a thing you can now sew onto a dress. And into the star quadrille, rehearsing with her friends through the Lenten afternoons, goes Miss Carrie Astor, Mrs. Astor's daughter. What happens next is not rumour. It happened. The drawing rooms told it that same week, and the participants themselves confirmed it, and kept confirming it for the rest of their lives. And if the phrasing below is the drawing room's phrasing, the facts are on the record. Carrie Astor and her set rehearse their star quadrille on the assumption, natural as breathing to an Astor, that invitations will follow wherever an Astor intends to dance. And Alva Vanderbilt, informed of the rehearsals, lets it be known, with a regret polished like a bayonet that she is afraid Miss Astor cannot be invited to the ball. It would not be correct. For, and here is the sentence with which one woman from Mobile, Alabama, breaks 200 years of New York, Mrs. Astor has never called at her house. The Vanderbilts and the Astors are not acquainted. Every rule the old city ever aimed at you, fired back down the avenue in a single charge. The tribe's own law, their most sacred procedure. No acquaintance without the call, no invitation without the acquaintance. Picked up whole, and laid across the door of the one event their own children would sell their inheritances to attend. Mrs. Astor can hold the wall, and her daughter's quadrille dances at the ball of the season without her. The girl weeping at home while all young New York waltzes past the papers into the new age. Or the wall can open. There is no third door. 10 years of McAllister's arithmetic, 18 boxes of granite refusal, and the entire fortress is checkmated in one move by its own rulebook, over a dance. New York holds its breath for a week. You hold yours with it because, do you see it? This is your war now too, fought by a woman with the nerve you never had, at a scale you could never mount. If the wall holds against $3 million and 1,200 invitations, it holds against you forever. If it cracks, on a grey afternoon in the third week of March, a dark green brougham comes down Fifth Avenue from 34th Street and stops at 52nd before the White Chateau. A footman in the Astor blue descends, mounts the steps, and delivers into the hand of the Vanderbilt butler a small oblong of engraved cream stock. Mrs. Astor. That is all it says. It is enough. It is everything. The call is paid. The acquaintance exists. 200 years of wall goes over in the length of a footman's errand, and every servant's hall on the avenue has the news before the brougham is a home again, and Martha brings it up to you with your tea, trying and failing to walk slowly. Within days, the drawing-rooms clock it with sundial precision. An invitation to the ball arrives at 34th Street, and Miss Carrie Astor's star quadrille rehearses on, now with a destination. And the Dowager Empress of New York asked, so the story runs, how it came to this, is said to have observed that the time had come for the Vanderbilts, that in a country like this one could not hold the door against those the growth of the age brought forward. Whether she said it quite so, or said it at all, I will tell you honestly, it is attribution, not document. What is document is the card, the brougham, the date, and the fact that the proudest woman in America blinked first, and all New York saw her blink. 2 days after the brougham's errand, on the silver tray with the morning's cards, lies a large square envelope of cream stock, addressed in a secretary's copperplate to Mr. and Mrs. Jacob Ellsworth. You do not open it for a full minute. You have earned the minute. 1,200 invitations, and one of them, at last, is yours. Not for your 2 years of correct calls, you understand. You harbour no illusions by now. It is Jacob's name on the metropolitan subscription list beside the Vanderbilt names. It is the senator. It is Alva's list makers sweeping in the whole new money regiments, precisely because this ball is the founding muster of the parallel city. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. The thick cream card is in your hand, and your hand is not entirely steady. And Martha, watching from the door, says softly, in French, that Madame will want to see the dressmaker today. What follows is the strangest fortnight this city's tradesmen have ever known. Lent above, carnival below. Officially, New York is still at prayer. Practically, every costumier, wig-maker, armourer, and seamstress on the island is working by gaslight to 3 a.m, and the fashionable dressmakers have barred their doors against spies, and there are ladies, This was sworn to you by 3 separate parlours, who have ordered 2 costumes from 2 houses under 2 names to keep their disguise a secret. The steamers from Havre are bringing Worth gowns by the crate load, $400, $600, $1,000 the costume, a workman's ear folded into tissue in every crate. The papers, scandalised and enchanted, print estimates like war news. The flowers alone at such a figure, the catering at such a figure, the whole night, they will finally guess at $250,000. Somewhere below 23rd Street, the old guard dresses for it in the houses of ancestors who blackballed the Astors and says nothing, because there is nothing left to say. The wall is attending. You go on Mrs. Pruine's counsel as Martha Washington. Every fool on that floor will be Marie Antoinette, she says, feet on the stool, eyes bright as a girl's. She has been invited too, blood-telling as always, and is going, she announces, as her own great-grandmother, which will cost her $9 in alterations and outrank everything. Half the Antoinettes will be wearing real Bourbon jewels, mark me, and the joke of that will escape every one of them. No, you're new money in a republic, my dear, so go as the republic. Go as the one aristocrat this country ever admitted to having, the general's wife. Dove-grey silk, fichu, powder, not one diamond. Let Washington Square try to sneer at Martha Washington. There is no ground to stand on. I have checked. Martha builds the costume in 9 days, and it is the best judged thing you have ever worn. Grey silk with a shadow of rose in the weave, the fichu of plain fine lawn, hair powdered soft, and at the last moment, alone at the glass while Martha hunts a pin, you open the jewel case, lift the velvet tray, take your mother's $2 coral rose out of the chamois, and pin it under the fichu's fold, against the collarbone, where no one on earth will see it. Sandusky, going to the ball. Some armour is worn on the inside, and so, the 26th of March, 1883, the Monday after Easter, the night the old New York ends. It has rained all evening, and Fifth Avenue north of 50th Street is a single unmoving river of carriages, lamps hissing in the wet, 2 solid files stretching back below the cathedral, inching toward the awning and the crimson carpet where a crowd of thousands, ordinary New York wet woolen umbrellas held back by police, stands in the rain to watch the costumes descend from the broughams. They cheer the good ones. Your groom inches the bays forward for 50 minutes. Jacob beside you in the dark of the carriage, in the buff and blue of a continental officer that he protested for a week and secretly likes. Hold your hand in the old freight clerk grip. And neither of you says what you're both thinking, which is 2 years, 400 calls, 19 regrets, 1 lamppost stare on a public sidewalk. And here we are anyway, at the door where the sentry turns, then the doors, and you are inside it. They will write about this entrance hall for 50 years, and every word will be true and none of it will touch it. The great stair of carved cornstone climbing 60 feet through the middle of the house, the walls sheeted in orchids and lilies of the valley, gilded youths. Alva has costumed even the caterers. Everywhere with trays and light of a kind you've never seen indoors in your life, because among the gas and the wax there is the pale, steady miracle of Edison bulbs, and the whole vast stone interior blazes shadowless like a cathedral cut from ice. The air is one solid perfume, hothouse roses by the wagon load, orchids, warm wax, powder, silk, somewhere under it the wet wool ghost of the rain outside. And the sound is a sea roar of 1,200 voices climbing over Lander's orchestra somewhere above, and through it, up the stone stair, flows the impossible. Mary Stuart on the arm of a Venetian doge, a phalanx of Marie Antoinettes, exactly as prophesied, diamonds almost certainly bourbon, friars, toreadors, Capuchin monks who are actually bank presidents. A gentleman got up as a telephone, and a young Miss Strong of the old blood wearing as the puss of the fairy tale, a taxidermied white cat upon her head, and 7 cats' tails upon her skirts, a thing so magnificently deranged that you and Jacob simply look at each other, Cleveland to Cleveland, and look away before you laugh. At the head of the stair, receiving beneath a portrait and 1,000 roses, stands a small determined woman from Mobile, Alabama, dressed as a Venetian princess out of a Renaissance canvas, pearls to the waist, entirely calm, as though she had merely reserved this evening some years ago and the city has now arrived to honour the booking, which is, you reflect, bowing over her hand in the moving line, one minor guest among 1,200, exactly what has happened. You are nobody here. Understand that clearly, because Frances did. This is not her triumph. She is wallpaper at it. One grey Martha in a river of queens. It is the best vantage in the world. The nobodies see everything. You find your ground by a pilaster at the edge of the dancing floor, banked ceiling high with palms and roses, and from there, in the course of 1 hour, you watch the old world capitulate in order, like a formal surrender. You watch the hobby horse quadrille come down the floor, riders in hunting pink astride those 2 months in the making horses of real hide, absurd and gorgeous, the whole room roaring. You watch the mother goose, the Dresden shepherdesses glazed white like the china of dead kings, and then the lights are lowered, the gas that is, and out of the dimness comes the star quadrille, 8 young women of the oldest blood in America in yellow and blue and mauve and white, each with her electric star burning above her forehead, Mr. Edison's current carried somewhere in the silk, and the whole ballroom goes still, actually still, 1,200 people silent at once, and among the dancing stars, radiant, restored, is Miss Carrie Astor, dancing in the house her mother swore never to know while her mother watches. Because Mrs. Astor is here, 20 feet from you, no more, in velvet and the whole Golconda of the family diamonds, no costume that anyone afterward would be able to name. Empresses do not dress up as anything. That is the entire point of empresses. Standing with McAllister at her shoulder, watching her daughter dance by electric light in the citadel of the enemy, and you from your pilaster, minor, invisible, watch her face. It gives nothing. It is a magnificent face, and it gives absolutely nothing. And you think of Marta's grandmother's jewels lesson, and Granger's ladder, and Mrs. Prune's whalebone wanting, and you understand that you are watching the greatest performance of the code ever given, defeat, worn correctly. The wall came to the ball. The wall is bowing to its hostess. The wall is complimenting the flowers, and under your fichu against your collarbone you press one finger, lightly, to a $2 coral rose. And somewhere in Ohio, a woman who wore it to a wooden church every Sunday of her life looks down the years at her daughter standing powdered in the light of the future. And you could not say, if asked, whether what floods you in that moment is victory or homesickness or grief, only that it is enormous, and that you will never tell anyone, and that you write it later that night, in cipher, in the black book, in 4 words. Supper is at 2, at 100 small tables, and it is superb, and you note with a private smile that it is not better than Perrault. You dance the German at 3. At some pale hour Jacob finds you, coat unbuttoned by 1 button, happier than the opera has ever made him, and says, I talked railroads for half an hour with a man dressed as Cardinal Richelieu. And you go home through the emptying grey streets with the rain stopped and the milk wagons already out, past a hod carrier walking to the new buildings with his dinner pail, $1.50 waiting for him at the top of a ladder, passing under the windows where the $250,000 is guttering out in its candelabra. And the two of you who have been the man with the pail watch him out of sight in silence, and hold hands in the dark of the carriage like the clerk and the farm girl of 1868, all the way down the avenue you came to conquer. The next morning, New York wakes to find the ball on the front pages, column after column, and the old world formally, publicly, printedly over. And that, the papers, the lists, the surrender, that morning belongs to everyone. But the night itself, the pilaster, the still ballroom, the electric stars, the Empress's face giving nothing, that belongs to the wallpaper. The nobodies see everything. Now let the roar die away, because it does die away, faster than you would think. History slams its doors and then history goes home, and what is left, always, is a woman in a quiet house, with a season to bury and a life to keep living. It is the last week of March, 1883. The candles are out. The city exhales. And now, so do you. April comes up the avenue the way it always does, from the bottom of the island north, first in the fruit sellers' barrows, then in the milliners' windows, then in the thin green haze on the park elms. And with it comes the thaw, not a triumph. You must not imagine trumpets. There are never trumpets in this city. You know that better than anyone alive by now. What comes instead is weather of the other kind, the kind you had stopped hoping for, arriving one card at a time on the silver tray. The skating party house, silent since Christmas, resumes calling as though no silence had occurred, because in their grammar resuming without explanation is the apology. 2 of the 19 January regrets leave cards in the same week. A dinner invitation arrives from a name in your book that has never once appeared there in ink of any kind, and Mrs. Pruin, examining it, pronounces it sound. Old blood, patriarch cousinage, unimpeachable, and watches you sideways with her bright black eyes, while you enter it in the cipher with a hand you keep deliberately slow. It is not that the ball changed their hearts. Hearts are not the organ this city keeps its decisions in. It is simpler and larger than that. The ground itself moved on the 26th of March, and every person on it is quietly refiguring where they stand. The Astor card at the Vanderbilt door did not open one house. It repriced every house. If the Empress herself has acknowledged that the age has brought people forward, if her own daughter danced by electric light in a new money chateau while all the world watched, then the smaller fortresses down the avenue are defending a line their own commander has abandoned, and they know it, and one by one, without a word, without a single admission that any line ever existed, they are marching their little garrisons back to new positions. You watch it happen across 3 weeks of April, morning by morning, card by card, and you find you feel none of the things you expected to feel. Not victory. Something quieter. The feeling of a long arithmetic finally coming out even, and then, on a bright cold Tuesday near the end of the month, at 10 minutes past 4 in the afternoon, Granger opens the drawing-room door and his voice does something you've never heard it do, which is pause, a full half-second before the name. Mrs. Peyton Van Zandt. She is in your drawing-room for 11 minutes. 15 is the limit for a first call. 11 is what she gave you in April a year ago, in her own parlour, when she examined you like a horse she had no intention of buying. and she gives you 11 again to the minute. And you understand the number is deliberate, a closing of brackets, because with that tribe everything is deliberate, everything is grammar, all the way down. She takes tea. She speaks of the weather, which is seasonable, of the tulips coming up in Washington Square, which were her grandmother's bulbs from Utrecht and outlast everything, a sentence she lets lie on the carpet between ye and all its plain double meaning. She does not mention December. She does not mention the sidewalk outside Arnold Constable's, or the lamplit hall behind her butler's shoulder, or a lawyer's letter on creamstock offering your chef the Indies. Nothing has happened. There is never anything so vulgar as a happening. At the door, already risen, already half-turned, gloves already buttoned, she pauses and looks at you, into your face, into your eyes, the way one looks at a person. "My cousin tells me," she says, "that your terrapin is correct. A beat, 4 feet 11 inches of black silk and 200 years weighing something for the last time. Very little in this city is any more. Good afternoon, Mrs. Ellsworth." And she is gone, down your steps to her ancient brougham, having left on your hall table, in her own hand, her own gloved fingers, her own fold, a card with the corner turned down. You stand in the hall a long moment, holding it. 2 years, 6 visits worth of your cards in her silver basket, every one of them flat ignored, a public cut administered for an audience, a kitchen raid, a wall as old as the deeds to the island. And here is the whole surrender, 3 inches by 1.5 inches, 32 engraved characters, 1 folded corner. You carry it upstairs, and you do not put it on the tray with the day's others. You open the locked drawer, and you lay it in the black book, flat, at the page where the cipher records a December sidewalk, so that the 2 entries face each other. Then you sit at the desk for a while doing nothing at all, which is a thing you have not done, you realise, since October. Mrs. Pruin, on the Monday, listens to the account of the 11 minutes with her feet on the needlework stool and her tea going cold, and laughs once softly at the tulips, and then does something she has never done, asks to see the book. You have never shown it to a living soul. Jacob knows it exists. Mart knows where it lives. No one has read it. You go and fetch it, and you put 2 winters of New York into her small dry hands, and she turns the pages of dots and crosses slowly. The 400 calls, the corners, the cuts, the debts and credits of the soul of the city. All of it dated, all of it ruled. And when she looks up, her black eyes are shining with something between scandal and delight, and she delivers the verdict you will keep till you die. "My dear," she says, "the men who built the railroads kept worse books than this." She closes it, pats the cover once like the head of a dangerous dog she has decided to like. "You asked me in November what to do with the wanting, and I told you to wear it like whalebone, and you did. But I'll tell you the thing I did not tell you, because you weren't ready, and now you are. They will never love you. You may stop hoping for it. It will save you a great deal of time. What they will do, what they are already doing, is reckon with you, which in New York is a much longer word for respect. Love is for Ohio, dear. Here, being counted is the tenderness." She hands the book back. "Lock it up. Burn it some day. Not yet." The last days of April bring one more small ceremony, this one below stairs. On the final Sunday of the month, Monsieur Perrault takes possession of his kitchen for the first of his Sundays, his guests, his menu, his door, and cooks for 6 French chefs from 6 great houses of this city. 3 of whose mistresses cut you at one time or another. The basement telegraph observes no such frontiers. A dinner of Provence, no terrapin, no canvas back, nothing correct, but a fish soup of outrageous garlic, and a daube his mother made in Arles, and afterward the singing comes up through the floors of your silent correct house until nearly midnight in Provençal, which not even Marthe can follow. You and Jacob sit at the top of the kitchen stairs in the dark for a quarter of an hour, listening, holding your cooling cups like children at a banister. For 6,000 a year plus one Sunday a month, you have purchased the only unconditionally happy room on this block of Fifth Avenue. It is, Jacob observes, going up to bed, the best contract either of you has ever signed. And in May, the 24th of May, 1883, a hot, bright Thursday, you stand at a window high over the East River and watch this city marry its future in public, because the Brooklyn Bridge opens and everything stops. 14 years they built it. You have watched it from ferries all your 2 years here. The 2 great granite towers, 276 feet of stone, taller than anything on either shore, taller than everything in North America but church spires and the impossible curve of it slung between them. A single span of over 1,500 feet, steel wire where the whole world said steel wire could not be trusted. The longest suspended anything ever raised by the human species. The man who designed it died of it at the start. His son directed it until the caisson sickness broke his body, and for the last decade the son's wife, Emily Roebling, carried the mathematics and the orders across that river in her own head, so that the engineers took their instructions from a woman for years, and the bridge got built anyway. A sentence you enjoy more than any other fact you know. This afternoon the President of the United States walks across it. The harbour is white with steamers. The school children of 2 cities have the day, and when the dark comes down, barge after barge of fireworks turns the sky over the river into daylight of every colour, and the crowds on the rooftops of 2 cities roar at once. One animal with 1,000,000 throats, and you can hear it faintly, even here. You cross it yourself 10 days later, at Jacob's insistence, on foot, on the elevated promenade the builders set above the roadways. For pedestrians, a walkway in the sky, a nickel's toll. And this is where I want to leave you standing for a moment, because Francis stood there a long time. It is early morning, little wind, the river the colour of old pewter. You are 135 feet above the water at the centre of the span, higher than you have ever stood in your life outside a church tower, and the 2 cities lie out flat around you in the young light like a map of themselves. South, the harbour, a forest of masts along South Street thicker than any woodlot in Ohio, ferries drawing their white seams, the steamers standing down the Narrows for Havre with next winter's worth gowns already ordered and not yet sewn. North, the island runs away in its long brown miles, and you can find them all from here. That is the astonishment, the whole board of your war in one eye. The Academy of Music, sooty and low at 14th Street, 18 boxes of granite pride, one more winter of empire left in it, though it doesn't know that yet. The yellow brick walls at Broadway and 39th, roofed now, glazing in, 122 boxes racing toward October. Delmonico's awnings at 26th, the grey church spires, your own block, and far up the avenue, catching the sun like a trick of snow, a white chateau where the age turned on a folded card. From down there, each of those rooms was the entire world. From up here, the entire world is 40 seconds of looking, and the bridge under your feet. Stone and wire built by a dying man's arithmetic carried in a woman's head will outlast every drawing room in it. You understand at last, standing on the answer. They never let you in, and it never mattered, and not because the wanting was wrong. Mrs. Prune was right. You'll keep the wanting. It holds everything up. It never mattered because the city they guard the doors of is already dissolving under them, at 1,500 feet a span, at 122 boxes a winter, at 1,200 invitations a night. You were not born here, as their grammar has it. You arrived. So did the wire. So did the electric light. So did everything on this island that is going to matter in the century that is coming. And the century is coming fast, and it is arriving every morning on every boat up every set of area steps, faster than any list can be closed against it. You walk back toward Manhattan with the harbour wind at your back, and you're quite sure no one on that promenade could tell, to look at you, that anything at all has settled in you for good. Smile, write it down. You don't need to write this one down. This one you'll keep where the coral rose lives, on the inside against the bone. June, and the season formally dies. The awnings come down. The knocker comes off the door. Half the avenue is already sheeted in brown holland, and the vans roll north and east. Newport for the summer colony, Saratoga for the racing set, Europe for the wounded. Your own house folds itself away around you room by room. The chandeliers bagged in muslin like great sleeping birds, the silver gone to the vault, Perrault off to France on his August, first Sundays having made of him, Granger reports with no expression whatever, the most contented tyrant on the island, and Marty already deep in the campaign maps of autumn, because there is a costume ball being whispered of for next winter, and a hostess's war, like a railroad, is never finished, only operating. You will go to Newport in July. You've taken a cottage, which is what they call the Marble Palaces there. A cottage, the way they call 400 people society. And Mrs. Prune will come for a fortnight in August. Blood and purse in their long-standing treaty, and sit on your veranda above the sea dealing out Albany stories like a duelist. And on the last evening in the emptied house, with the vans gone and the rooms all shrouded and the two of you eating a plain cold supper in the little morning room like clerks again, Jacob at the window with his coffee suddenly laughs. One short freight office laugh. And you ask him what, and he says, 18 boxes. All of it. 2 years, the letters, the lawyers, your 400 calls, that whole regiment of Marie Antoinette. Over 18 boxes at an opera. And in October we'll have 122, and I'll fall asleep in ours by 9 o'clock, and it will have been worth every dollar. He is right on all counts. He will be asleep by 9. You will let him sleep. But 9 o'clock is an hour off yet, and there is one piece of business left in this house before the season can truly be called closed, and it happens, like all the real business of your marriage, over a ledger. Jacob has the accounts out on the library desk, the season's books closed this morning with the quarter, and he goes through them for you the way he's gone through every set of books the two of you have ever owned. Back to the kitchen table years when the whole quarterly reckoning was 1 page and a prayer. The figures come off his tongue easily without flinching, because Jacob has never in his life flinched at a true number. It is one of perhaps 5 things about him you would call beautiful. The house and stable and garrison of 21, some 14,000 for the year, all told. The entertaining, the dinner of the 14th, the ball of the 19 regrets, the flowers, the Frenchman's provisions, Landers men, the cards and carriages and gowns and gloves, the whole bright machinery of your war. A little over $40,000. He says it plainly and lets it sit on the desk between you. $40,000. And because you are you, and because the locked drawer of yourself never quite locks, you do the other sum in your head before you can stop it. The sum you stopped saying aloud 2 years ago. $1.50 a day, 300 working days if a man is lucky and the weather holds. 90 years, a season of calls and terrapin, 1 winter of cream stock and regrets, and on the other side of the scale, the entire working life of the man with the dinner pail, walked to the ladder and up it, morning after morning from his first day of work to his last, and 30 years of his sons beyond it. You have stood on both sides of that scale in one lifetime, which is a thing almost no one in the 18 boxes can say. And standing in the lamplight, you make yourself hold the number the way Marta taught you to hold a stare, without blinking, without turning it into anything easier than it is. It bought a wall's attention. It fed no one. Both of those things are true, and you will carry them both, because that is the price of remembering where Sandusky is, and you would rather carry them than forget. Then Jacob closes the ledger, squares it with the blotter, and opens the inside drawer. The letter is where it has been since October. 11 lines from the directors of the Academy of Music, regretting, appreciating, anticipating nothing, remaining his most obedient servants. The splinter in the palm. He unfolds it under the lamp and he reads it aloud to you, all 11 lines, in his flattest freight office voice, and somewhere around the 6th line the flatness begins to fail him, and by the 10th you are both laughing quietly, helplessly, like clerks at the absurdity of kings, at the beautiful mummified courtesy of it, at no boxes available, nor anticipated to become available, written in a fine secretary's hand to a man whose money is at this moment glazing the windows of 122 boxes 11 blocks north. You expect him to burn it. The fire is right there. Instead, he folds it back along its old creases, returns it to the drawer, and shuts the drawer with the small click of a man completing a transaction. No, he says to the question you didn't ask. I'm keeping it. And on the 22nd of October I'm going to read it once more, from our box, between the acts. He turns down the lamp. Best 11 lines ever written to me. They told me exactly where the door was going to be, Francis. It just wasn't the one they were standing in. Afterward, with the house gone quiet and Jacob asleep on schedule, you sit up a while at the morning room window in your wrapper, the way you find you do now on the last night of anything, and you let the year file past the dark glass in its own order, like carriages in the park. Mart, who's already at war with next winter, and who said to you last week, folding the Martha Washington costume into its tissue tomb, that Madame will need something better than a dead president's wife for the next campaign. There is talk of another great costume ball for next season, the town being now incurably infected, and who then permitted herself for the first time in 2 years' service the ghost of a smile of pure professional greed. Granger, who will hold the house all summer with a skeleton staff and his annual fortnight at the seaside at Long Branch, where it pleases him to be mistaken for a bishop. Perrault, sailing Saturday on the French line, deck passage refused, cabin class insisted upon and granted, carrying in his trunk, Granger reports with no expression whatever, a folded lawyer's letter from Carthage, which he intends to show to his brother in Arles as evidence of what Americans will pay for boiled terrapin. The chin, who bowed to you at the Ascension 2 Sundays running, 4 degrees warmer than April, Carrie Astor, who danced, the shop girl at Arnold Constable's with the good stitching, to whom you've twice gone back, and who knows your name now, and lights when you come in, and is the only person in this city who says it with no arithmetic in it at all, and Mrs. Pruin. This past Monday was the last Monday. She goes to cousins on the Hudson in July, to sit, as she puts it, in other people's shade and disparage their roses until August, when she comes to you at Newport. You brought her, as a parting gift, not flowers and not silver, but a thing that took you 3 weeks and 2 book dealers to find. A little Albany printed history of the old Patroon families, 1830, with her grandfather's name in it, and a morocco covered the exact black of her third best velvet. She turned it over in her small dry hands for a long moment, and then looked up with those bright, unforgiving eyes gone suspiciously brighter, and said, "You looked for the binding to match. 2 years ago you'd have sent roses and a footman." She put the book on the table at her elbow where the Bible had been. "There may be hope for this city yet. Go to Newport, dear. Rest. You'll need it. Next season will be worse now that everything's possible." And at the door, in full defiance of every rule she has spent 2 winters teaching you, she took your face in both hands like a farm aunt and kissed your cheek and said, "You'd have made a very fair Dutchwoman, Francis. It's the bookkeeping," and shut the door on you before either of you could disgrace 3 centuries of grammar with another word. That is the year. That is the whole campaign, told in the only ledger that will still mean anything in 50, not the $40,000, but the faces the dark window gives you back, one by one, each of them a door that was shut to you once and is not shut now. You never did get the trumpet. There are no trumpets in this city. There is only, on a June night with the knocker off the door, a woman at a window who came from a farmhouse with 11 trunks and a worthless letter, sitting in the one house on this avenue where a butler is allowed to be mistaken for a bishop, a chef is allowed to sit down, a widow's treaty turned into a friendship, and the mistress keeps the books herself. They would not give you their city, so you did the American thing, the thing your husband did at 39th Street, the thing this whole roaring island does every single morning of its life. You built your own. Here is what you do not yet know, standing in your shrouded morning room in June of 1883, and I will tell you, because you've earned it, and because it is all on the record now. You do not yet know that on the 22nd of October, 4 months from tonight, the Yellow Brewery will open its doors with Faust, with Christy Nielsen singing, and the parallel city will have its cathedral and boxes to spare. You do not yet know that the old academy will fight one brave season against it and then strike its colours. That within 2 years the granite fortress of the 18 boxes will give up Grand Opera altogether, beaten not by argument but by arithmetic, the only conqueror this island has ever truly obeyed. You do not know that the little empress will move her list uptown and go on holding it for another generation, empress of a larger, looser, faster empire that her own capitulation made possible. Or that the woman from Mobile will be done with balls and onto suffrage platforms before the new century is old, still making walls come to her. Or that the liturgy of calls and corners and 15 minutes, the entire exquisite savage machine you broke yourself learning, will be dead inside 40 years, dead as the Dutch, swept out by telephones and motor cars and daughters, who will laugh, gently, not unkindly, at the idea that a folded corner once mapped a human soul. The wall you could not walk through is already sand. Everything solid on that avenue is already sand except the bridge. But that is all to come, and none of it is tonight's business. Tonight the house is quiet and the season is over, and you're so tired. The good tiredness, finally, the kind with nothing circling in it. So put out the lamp yourself. The footmen are dismissed to bed. Climb the dark stairs of your own house, past the sheeted mirrors, with the streetlight coming through the fan light the way the moon used to come through thin curtains in Sandusky. Let Marty unbuild you for the last time this season. The 30 buttons, the laces, the whalebone set aside at last, and your ribs remembering, slowly, the whole width of a breath. Brush out the powder. Set the coral rose back under the chamois, under the diamonds, where it keeps its watch. The book is locked in its drawer, and the drawer will keep. The cards will keep. Whatever New York means to do to you next, it cannot do it before October, and October is a whole harvest away. Lie down in the wide bed in the quiet house on the quiet avenue. The city is still out there. It is always out there. But June has gentled it. The last omnibus down the block, a watchman's slow heels on the flagstones, a ship's horn from the far river softened by 2 miles of sleeping streets, and, high and faint, wind over the chimney pots. The same wind that crossed the harbour this morning and lifted the gulls around the great stone towers. 500,000 fires are banked for the night. The horses are stabled. The shop girls are off their feet at last. Somewhere downtown, even the old ladies of the old blood are asleep under their dark portraits, and their grandmother's tulips are closed in the dark of Washington Square. And for these few hours the whole warring city lies under one blanket, keeping one truce, and no one is at home to anybody. You made it to the end of the season, both seasons, all of it, and you are enough now. Do you know that? You were enough before the card came, and enough the morning the tray held nothing, and enough on the sidewalk when the old woman's eyes filed you under lampposts. Warm enough, fed enough, loved enough, by the clerk asleep beside you who waited 9 years for a railroad and would have waited 90 for you. By a Frenchman singing in your basement, by a small fierce widow on 10th Street who will never once say the word. That's more than the list ever held. That's more than the 18 boxes ever sat. That's enough. It was always enough. Tomorrow there will be trunks and tickets and the boat to Newport. Tomorrow there will be new lists, new campaigns, a costume ball taking shape in Martha's ferocious head. Tomorrow the whole bright machine will begin to turn again somewhere, because it always does. But that's tomorrow. Tonight there is only the wide bed, and the soft June dark, and the watchman's heels growing fainter, and no engagement on earth before noon. So let it go now. Let the season go. The cards, the corners, the 15 minutes, all the beautiful, cruel grammar. You kept every rule and outlasted the wall, and none of it is asked of you tonight. Let the avenue go, marble and arithmetic, sleeping under its Holland sheets. Let the ballroom go dark in the white chateau, the orchids long since swept away, the electric stars unplugged and packed in tissue like the future resting. Let the bridge stand its watch over the black river with its necklace of new lamps, holding 2 cities together while both of them dream. Let your breath come the whole way in, now that the whalebone is on the chair. Let it out slowly, slower, there. No one is watching you now. No one is weighing anything. For the first time since November, nothing you do in the next 8 hours can be done incorrectly. Centuries will pass. The avenue you know will change beyond recognition. The brownstones will come down, and towers of glass will stand where the 18 boxes stood, and the chateau at 52nd Street, $3 million of cornstone and Loire Valley turrets, will fall to the wreckers inside 50 years, sold for the ground under it, the only aristocrat this island has ever permanently crowned. The calling cards will vanish into museum drawers. The last hostess who remembers the code will forget it. But people will still arrive in that city with everything they own and a wanting they can't put down. Still stand outside the bright windows doing arithmetic. Still learn the rules no one will write down for them and keep their books and touch their small hidden talismans and wait for the wall to crack. Some things don't change. The arriving doesn't change. The wanting doesn't change. And the walls, write this down, you can check it against any century you like. The walls always crack. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way the tide took the harbour this evening, easy and certain, with the lamps coming on along the shore. Let the world fade the way the fireworks faded over the river, colour by colour, roar by roar, down to smoke, down to dark, down to the plain kind stars. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. The lists, the sums, the seating, the season, all of it laid down like cards on a silver tray that no one will read until morning, and morning is far away. You've earned this rest. 200 years of grammar and you learned it in 2 winters. 15 minutes, not one more. But sleep keeps no clock, and you may stay as long as you like. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.